Bonjour à tous and welcome to French for a Day. This is my little corner on YouTube where I like to talk about French beauty and lifestyle, and I like to share with you my French beauty secrets. Today's video, I thought it's going to be interesting to have a look at some common French stereotypes, true or myth. I'm going to share with you my insights as a foreigner who lived in France, and I have to mention that when I lived in France and when I'm in France, I never feel like a foreigner, so I have a very positive experience about France. And I'm probably going to share with you also a few tips along the way on how to get the best treatment in France if you're a foreigner, if you're visiting for fun, or if you decide to move to France. So let's go ahead and get started. As in most European countries, usually the younger generation is going to speak English, and they speak English very decently. But this stereotype, I believe that it's very damaging for the French society as a whole, because French almost sometimes feel ashamed to speak English. They feel like they don't speak well English, whereas at the same time they have very decent English. When I first arrived in France, I didn't speak French at all, so I was only communicating in English. And every time when I was communicating with French people in English, they would tell me, well, I don't speak English. Well, you are communicating with me quite well, and we have no problems understanding each other. So even the people that speak English so well, they think that they don't speak English just because of this stereotype. So yes, French people speak English. Of course, the older generation, most of them don't speak English, but the younger generation, as in all European countries, they speak English. That's a fact. They usually love to analyze a lot. They are very interested in politics. They're very interested in the world news. So they are mostly going to complain from everything. And mostly they're going to complain from things in France, from the government, from the organization in France. They are going to complain all the time. So yes, if you have communication with French people, you've probably noticed that they complain a lot. Here, when we talk about Parisians, we mean people that were born, raised in Paris, and they never lived anywhere else in the world. They lived in Paris their whole life. And they can appear to be a little bit snobbish because these are usually people from affluent families, and they are going to be very well educated. They are going to have incredible knowledge in the areas of art, history, architecture. They can talk on a lot of different topics, and they read constantly, and you might feel uncomfortable in their company.
Yeah, I agree. So dull talking about wine. It's like conversation about the weather. Far more interesting to drink it. No?
But if you can, and if you are patient with them, you can actually learn a lot. I find that these people are valuable. They are not the kind of people with whom you can have fun. However, you can learn a lot about France from these people. You can learn a lot about French history, about French government, about French education, about art, history. You can learn a lot. If these topics interest you, then definitely these are valuable people. They have also very good manners. And if you're not very well acquainted with etiquette, again, you might feel out of place. You might feel like this person appears to be very snobbish, and you're probably not going to have, apparently you're not going to have good relations with such people. But yes, there is the phenomenon of the Parisian snob. Which brings me to another topic that I wanted to share with you. I started working on my blog again. I have an art section in my blog, and you can go ahead and check out my art section if you're interested. I am going to start writing more regularly on my blog, and I would love if you could check it out. Well, I would say that for the most part that's true, because imagine living in a country and not speaking the language. If you are a tourist, you don't need to learn French. French are always going to appreciate if you try to speak their language. They're always going to be helpful, and they're going to help you to learn their language correctly. French is one of the hardest languages. I speak a few languages, but I would say that French is the hardest to learn. And if you want to live permanently in France or work in France, then you definitely have to learn English, even though there are a lot of international companies where they speak English and everyone speaks English. You're not going to be able to fully integrate if you don't speak French, because you need French in order to understand the culture and in order to fully benefit from living in France. Otherwise, it's going to be pointless. That's absolutely not true, but I speak only for myself. When I first moved to France, I didn't speak French at all, and no one has ever been rude to me. Everyone was very warm, very welcoming, and I never felt like a foreigner in France. This is the only country where I always felt at home. So if there are French people watching this video, a huge thank you for making my experience in France so beautiful and unforgettable. France and the time when I lived in France was the best time. I hope that I'm going to be back to living in France again sometime. I know that it's going to happen somehow, but it all depends on how you treat people. There are certain habits and there are certain cultural differences, so it depends very much on your culture. For example, in France, there are certain expectations from you. For example, you can't just enter a bakery or any kind of shop and not start with bonjour.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour.
Same applies to Italy. These countries are very close in terms of culture and in terms of habits and expectations from foreigners. So bonjour is very important in France. It's very important to greet people before starting to talk to them. If you go ahead, approach someone and just start talking to them right away, you are probably not going to get the best treatment. So let's say you stop someone on the street, you want to ask them something and you jump right into the question, then you're not going to get the best treatment. First, you have to start with bonjour and then ask politely. And also, if you're in France, don't just start speaking in English immediately, assuming that the person is going to speak English. Ask them if they speak English first, because some people might not feel comfortable talking in English and you might appear to be a little bit more aggressive to them. So this applies both for France and for Italy. Even though in Italy people are more friendly, they are more likely to behave in a friendly manner. In France, always start with bonjour and ask, do you speak English? Be polite, smile, and you're never going to get a bad treatment in France. Also, I would say that I had some of the best, and I still have some of the best experiences when I go to France. If you behave politely, they are going to behave politely as well. Also, if you're a foreigner in France and you love France, just tell them that you love France. Tell French people that you love. If you go to a restaurant and you like the meal, then just compliment the chef. And if you go to the same restaurant a few times and if you're polite to them, compliment the chef. If it's a restaurant, certainly you're going to get the best table. Sometimes you're going to get a free meal, a compliment from the restaurant or from the bakery. With bakeries, this happens actually very often. I have one bakery where I always go and get my croissants, and like once a month at least I'm going to get a whole free breakfast with a lot of stuff. So this is not unusual for France and Italy. You just have to know how to behave with them. And again, if you like something, compliment it. If you do not understand something and if you want to learn something about France, ask French people. They love talking about French culture. They love educating foreigners and they love to talk about their history, the art. They love to talk about everything connected to France. So you can learn a lot. And also another tip that I have for you is try the smaller bakeries, the smaller restaurants when you go to France. I think that these are, I love supporting small businesses, and in France and Italy there are still small businesses, those small bakeries or small restaurants. They are very niche. They are usually going to get the best food there, and you're really going to be able to taste different food. You're going to taste the flavors of the country. You're going to be able also to communicate with the staff there in a more friendly way, or you are most probably going to be able to communicate with the owners as well. So this is something that I always appreciate about France, and you're going to be able to connect with them and have a different experience rather than going to the big restaurants, the Michelin star restaurants, where you can't really have this personal connection to people and they are more international. Well, that's mostly true. I would say that French, they are most likely going to compliment you if you look au naturel, if you look more natural. If you're wearing a lot of makeup, chances are that you're not going to get a compliment from a Frenchman. They just don't pay attention to little imperfections. They appreciate the person more than other nations. But isn't that fantastic and the most adorable thing? You're going to get compliments when you're not wearing tiniest bit of makeup, and this instantly boosts your confidence. This is something that I absolutely love about French men, is that they don't really care about makeup. They appreciate the person, they appreciate the natural beauty, and they don't care if you have a spot coming out. It's normal, it's human, it's natural. It instantly boosts your confidence and instantly uplifts your spirit, makes you feel better. Mostly true, especially on a daily basis, because in France you usually are going to, especially in the big cities, you're usually going to walk long distances and you cannot wear heels. You cannot survive in heels. But a lot of French women are going to have heels in their handbag if they have an important meeting or so. But if you are in France, and especially the big cities, you definitely need comfortable shoes. Shoes that are elegant and comfortable at the same time are very trending in France, always. Well, not as much as Italians, but yes, usually French are going to be late for meetings, unless we're talking about the business world and the financial district, then people are going to be in time all the time. But if we're talking about meetings between friends, usually yes, French are going to be late. And if you ever get invited for a dinner at someone's home, be sure to arrive at least like 15 minutes later. This is as a rule, because otherwise you're going to put pressure on the host and it's not polite. So this is something that French people do. If you're invited for dinner, for a dinner party at 7 o'clock, at 7 p.m., be sure to arrive at 7:15 or 7:20, but never on time and never earlier, because this is going to be considered very unpolite. This is just some rules that I also follow, and it is the same in Italy as well. If you're invited somewhere for a dinner at someone's home, be sure to arrive 15 minutes later. Otherwise, it's going to be considered unpolite and usually the host might not be ready. I have the same habits as well. If I ever invite you at my home, don't arrive in time. Arrive like 15 minutes. I need these 15 minutes. It's really important. Well, this might come off as a shock for a lot of foreigners when they first arrive in France, but I find that especially in Paris, a lot of people smoke.
Aren't you going to say anything about the fact that I'm smoking?
Everybody smokes in Paris.
I think that the situation is improving, because when I used to live in France, it was approximately 10 years ago, and a lot of people used to smoke back then. Now, when I visit France, I often go there. I don't see that many people smoking, not as many as it used to be. So the situation is improving, but overall, French people smoke a lot. And it's not unusual also to see high school and see the students in front of the high school smoking. So they start smoking from an early age. It's a bad habit, but I think that the whole situation is improving. If we have French people here, let us know what's the updated situation in France. How is the situation with smokers? Are people starting to smoke less? Let us know in the comments below. Well, I don't think that this is true. I would say that some foreigners might get the impression that French people hate Parisians and that French people hate Paris as a whole.
Although each of the world's countries would like to dispute this fact, we French know the truth. The best food in the world is made in France. The best food in France is made in Paris.
I think that all foreigners only know about Paris, and most foreigners, when they say France, they think of Paris, and France is a beautiful country. It's one of the most beautiful countries in the whole world, and it has so many places to visit. It's not only Paris, but also some small villages. These are so incredibly beautiful. You can spend years just visiting different places in France, and I think that that's why a lot of foreigners get the impression that French people hate Paris. They hate the idea that Paris is the only city that is so famous among the foreigners. But if we have French people here, leave me a comment. Do you hate Paris and do you hate Parisians? Let us know in the comments. I would love to have some comments from French people here. I don't think that this is true, even though I have seen lately a lot of videos of people who used to live in France, they are moving out of France and they are doing this kind of videos. sharing how pressured they felt in France to lose weight.
Do you want to have lunch?
No, I'll have a cigarette.
I think that overall body image is very important in Europe, and healthy lifestyle is cherished a lot in all European countries. This is not only France. It's true that in Europe people are less accepting, and people in Europe usually are going to put a lot more pressure on other people to stay fit. I would not say that somebody is going to put pressure on you to lose weight. It is just the whole society cherishes fit people and cherishes the healthy lifestyle. This is a whole trend in Europe, and it has been going on for many years. A lot of people say that French people smoke to lose weight. I don't think that this is true. This is just a habit, a bad habit that French people have. And this habit was actually in a lot of other European countries. It's not only France that used to have this bad habit. I'm not sure how this is in other countries, but I can speak for Europe because I've traveled a lot. I've lived also in different countries in Europe. So I can say about it's a problem for whole Europe. And whole body image issue, this applies for all European countries. For example, in Italy, you have the so-called liquid breakfast, where people are literally going to skip breakfast. They are going to have lunch directly, and they're going to run. Everybody runs so that they can be in shape. So I would say that this pressure, you have a lot more pressure in Italy than you have in France. But these two countries are very similar, and overall in all Europe, body image is important. Obesity is not accepted well. I have some experience in the US. I have relatives that live in the US and lived in the US for over 30 years. I've had the opportunity to discuss with them, and in the US it's a lot more accepting. People are not going to judge. People are less judgmental when it comes to body image, and when it comes to being fit, being thin, people are less judgmental, which is fantastic. In Europe, yes, you are not going to receive compliments if you are overweight. In general, in Europe, this is not only for France, but in Europe, if people see that you're gaining weight, they're usually going to tell you, hey, you're gaining weight. You need to stop with the croissants, you need to stop with the chocolate. So because they think that it's healthy. I agree up to a point, it is healthier, but also at the same time, I wish that in Europe, people were more like the people in the US, more like Americans, a lot more accepting, because sometimes it may be disturbing for people who cannot keep the perfect weight because of some health conditions. So this is disturbing. But I have never experienced and I have never seen somebody being bullied in France about their weight. I would say that this is a myth. I think that this applies to Italian men. Italian men are usually going to cheat a lot. They are going to date a lot of different partners. Unfortunately, that's true. Unfortunately, I have a lot of Italian friends that do that even though they are married. So this is one of the worst traits of Italians. But French, I have never seen it. Overall, my experience from French men is that they are quite faithful and romantic, and they are gentlemen. So I've had a very good experience with French men. I've never had such experience. So I think that this applies more to Italian. Mostly that's true, and this is because in France taxes are sky high. This is a huge problem, so people don't have that much money to spend and to splurge on luxury goods. But I would say that French people always think very carefully about their purchases, especially their luxury purchases, and they always buy timeless pieces that they know that they're going to use. And before buying a luxurious product, a luxurious garment or accessory or makeup, they are always going to think what is the price and how much use they are going to get out of this product. And that's why they are always so well dressed, and we all admire the elegant and the French chic, because they think what they buy and they think whether the product that they are buying, the garment or the accessory that they are buying, whether this is going to fit their style, whether this is going to be something that they want to wear, something that they are going to feel confident with. And that's why when you see French people, they're usually very confident with their clothes, and they never wonder what to wear because their whole wardrobe is going to be very well thought. It's going to be very well structured. I actually have a video about 10 timeless fashion pieces for French wardrobe, and I'm going to make sure to link this video in the description box in case you're interested. Oh yes, that's true. They literally have shops that are dedicated only for cheese. They have incredible knowledge about cheese, and if you're in France, you definitely have to go ahead and try some cheeses. Yes, some of the cheeses are smelly, you might not like them, but yes, French love good high quality cheese. And sometimes even during the day, they're just going to go ahead, buy freshly baked bread and buy some cheese, make a sandwich just on the go and eat it. Well, they use a lot of skincare, not necessarily expensive one, but one that works for their skin type. And we can say with confidence that the so-called effortless French beauty is not that effortless, because they put a lot of effort into the way their skin and their hair looks. They don't use a lot of makeup, so they don't spend much time in the morning for makeup, but they definitely spend a lot of time on their skincare. And in this section, I have a lot of videos dedicated to the French chic, to the French makeup look, and also French skin. So I'm going to make sure to link those in the description box if you haven't seen them, so that you can get some inspiration about the French way to take care of your skin and the French way to do your makeup. Well, French respect their country a lot, and more than any other nation, French love to travel in their own home country. They love to explore France, and there is a good reason for that, because in France, as I mentioned, it's not only about Paris, but in France you can go ahead and visit so many beautiful, absolutely breathtaking villages and small towns where you can see so much beauty, and it's worth checking out, it's worth exploring. And French always love to learn about their own history. So I think that this is something good. They also travel abroad, but they are very well aware that there are so many beautiful places to see in France. So that's why, yes, I would say this is mostly true. They travel a lot in their own country. Well, that's true. They love high quality food. They love quality over quantity. They are going to eat all the time whatever they want, but just the quantity is going to be small. They are going to eat cheese, meat, they are going to eat all delicious food, but the quantity is going to be small, and that's why they stay slim. So if you're inviting French people, French friends at home for dinner, then I don't know, better buy something from a restaurant, order something from a restaurant if you're not a good cook, because they are usually not going to eat. Or try with some appetizers, try with some real French good cheese, and maybe choose a good wine, because yes, French are very sensitive, can be very sensitive about food, and they love talking about food. So they love a lot of herbs, a lot of ingredients, a lot of seasoning, and usually the French food, it takes ages to be cooked. So yes, they are sensitive about food.
Listen, we hate to be rude, but we're French. And it's dinner time.
I think that was all for today's video. I hope that I made you smile. And Canada and Australia, two countries that I'm dying to visit. Please join me in the comment section below. Tell me something typical about your country, some typical habits that you have and that might be interesting for us. I would love to learn a little bit more, whatever it is, whatever you would like to share. And also US, be sure to leave a comment and let me know, are there any differences between different states, like the East Coast, the West Coast? Do you have some significant differences? I would love to learn. This was just a fun video where I shared with you my point of view, but I would love to hear from you as well. I would love to read your comments. I always feel very inspired by your comments. So I hope to see you next time. Bye.